How's it going, everyone? This is Adam from Slurv, Ship My Money on DraftKings, and I'll be breaking down today's pitchers for you. On both sites, DraftKings and FanDuel have the 8 games today split up into two 4-game slates, so I'll break down each slate individually, starting with the early slate. Normally, I like to throw out a couple cash plays and then move into my GPP pitchers, but on both of these slates, I think there's just there's two clear cut pitchers that I think just stand above everybody else that I'll use in both formats. With the early slate, the number one pitcher is Jake Arrieta going against Milwaukee. It's the same matchup he had last night, but it got rained out. He's far and away the clear option again today. He's at home. He's facing a Milwaukee team that strikes out a lot and can't hit righties. And Arrieta is obviously one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. So at 13,600 on DraftKings, I'm just locking him in and going from there. The number 2 pitcher to me is Aaron Nola at 8,600 against the Nats. The Nats, they're a good team, but they're not a consistent, offensive force. They'll have games where they put up a lot of runs, but they'll also have a lot of games like they had last night against Hellickson where they just don't do anything. And, Nola's got pretty good stuff. He strikes out 8.5 batters per 9 innings. So he's got upside there. And I just, definitely like him. I think he's clearly the second best pitcher on this slate, and there's a pretty big gap. I will say that for tournaments, I will be monitoring, Twitter in the morning, trying to gauge exactly how highly owned Nola will be, because since I do think Arrieta and Nola are a clear-cut number 1 and 2, I expect them both to be really, really popular. And if it's a situation where I think it's going to be like 60% ownership on Nola and somewhere around 10% on Anibal Sanchez, I definitely think it's worth considering pivoting from Nola to Sanchez. It's not that I particularly even like Sanchez tomorrow or against the A's, but if you're projecting Nola's going to be 5 or 6 times as highly owned as Sanchez hasn't been particularly good this year, but he's capable of beating Aaron Nola, more than 20% of the time. With Nola going against the Nats, who, are very capable of having a good offensive game, and Sanchez going against the A's, who, dating back to last year, he's actually been a little bit better against lefties. He strikes out over 22% of lefties, and I expect the A's to run out an a lefty-heavy lineup. Sorry. So that's something that I definitely think is worth considering for tournaments. If it's just a good pivot spot on a slate where there's very limited options to be contrarian that aren't, in my opinion, just stupid. So, that's what I'm looking at for pitching there. I think maybe people will be interested in Roark coming off of his last start, and I probably would be if he was priced lower. He actually strikes out a decent amount of righties. I think it's between 20 and 21% his strikeout rate against righties, but against lefties he doesn't strike anybody out, and his price is up at 7,800. So I just don't really see a reason why you're not gonna just pay $800 more and take Aaron Nola instead of Roark and just get much, much more upside. I also looked when I was seeing how feasible it was to go with Arrieta and Nola. I looked at the pricing, and a lot of the lower, not as good guys in the Coors game are priced kind of low on DraftKings. The studs are all still, 5,000, but Cervelli's price I think is down to 3,700. I don't know if he'll play the day game after a night game, but Hundley's in that same range, and then you have Tony Walters down, 2,700 I think it was. So, and Matt Joyce at 2,900 if he gets the start. So when I looked at it real quick, it was pretty easy to go Arrieta Nola and then still get 6 guys from the Coors game. Not the studs, but still guys that are going to be hitting baseballs in Coors Field, and you have the 2 clear-cut, 2 top pitchers. So that's the route that I think I'll be taking. I think the other 2 offenses I really do like. I like targeting Bassett with the right-handed hitters on Detroit. he's actually been a little bit worse against righties than lefties dating back to last season. And Detroit has right-handed batters that can just crush the ball, and they seem like they're getting hot. They've had two good games in the last three, and the one that was bad was against Rich Hill, who's just continuing his career rejuvenation. So that's something that I want to target, but I don't want to target it at the expense of Coors Field. Like, I don't think it's good. It's going to be good to just go like Tigers and then mix in a few guys and ignore Coors Field. Like, I'd rather, if I'm not going to just stack up that whole game, just go like Pirate stack and then mix in some Tigers that I like or even like 4-4 or something. But I think you definitely need exposure to Coors Field. Like Chatwood's been pretty good, but it's still just a 4-game slate where one of the games is at Coors Field. So if there aren't weather concerns, then I'd rather just own Coors Field everywhere so that I'm over-owning the field and let other people make mistakes by not playing Coors Field. The Cubs, I mentioned the Tigers. I also like the lefties on the Cubs against Taylor Youngman. It's another good spot, but again, I don't want to do it, at the expense of Coors Field exposure. I want to mix them in with, Pirates and Rockies. So those are my thoughts on the early slate. Looking at the late slate, Jose Fernandez is the highest priced pitcher at $11,400 on DraftKings. He has, massive upside, but he hasn't really looked like himself yet this year, and he's facing a Dodgers team who I think will probably run out a lot of left-handed bats. Dating back to last year, his WOBA against lefties is .351, and he gives up a lot of hard contact to them as well. So I'm leaning towards saving $1,400 and going with Maeda at home against the Marlins team who struggles. I think I see the argument to take Fernandez because there's his upside if he's on is just so high, but I just think Maeda's the better play because it's not like he doesn't have upside. Like, he's facing the Marlins at Dodger Stadium and he strikes out over 8 batters per 9 innings so far in his career. And then my number 2 pitcher is Clay Buchholz against the Braves. I hate playing Clay Buchholz ever, but the Braves are basically like a single-A team right now. They have Freddie Freeman that hits well. They have Nick Markakis that hits singles. And then they have a bunch of guys who can't hit a baseball. So on a slate this short, I'm fine just going with Clay Buchholz at $8,000 and then having some room to spend on bats. I will say that I'm interested in seeing the Cardinals lineup. If for some reason they come out with a bunch of righties, then I'd be a little bit interested, tournaments only, in De La Rosa. He's very, very bad against lefties, but he's not that bad against righties. His xFIP against lefties is slightly below 6, like 5.94. And then against righties, it's low to mid 3s. So, if I remember correctly, it's definitely under 4. So if for some reason the Cardinals, just run out their right-handed lineup, I'd still be nervous about it because of the ballpark. But at 6,600, De La Rosa would, in my eyes, have some upside. His last start, he had his best start of the season against a Pirates team that's really righty-heavy. So if the Cardinals, for some reason, go with their righty lineup, then he's interesting. But assuming that they don't, I plan on picking on De La Rosa with as many Cardinals lefties as I can get. In that same game, I plan on targeting Waka. He's not given up a lot of runs this year, but he's not striking anybody out. Over his career, he's a little bit worse on the road than he is at Busch Stadium. And at Chase Field, if you're not missing bats, that's just like a recipe for disaster because that's such a good place to hit. If you're just letting everybody hit the ball, you're going to have a rough game more times than not. So I like both offenses in that game. And then I'm really interested in the Orioles against John Danks. They're back at Camden Yards. They're facing John Danks, who, dating back to last year, has a .35. He has a 356 WOBA. Against righties. 41% fly ball rate, 44% pull rate, and he only strikes out 16% of batters. So you're facing an Orioles team that has a ton of right-handed power. They strike out a lot, but you don't strike anybody out. So they're going to be making contact, and you give up a lot of pulled fly balls at Camden Yards. That's a really good spot to maybe capitalize on a little lower than, maybe a little bit of low ownership on the Orioles just because they haven't been scoring runs. So I don't think they'll be super low because there's not many options, but probably lower than it should be. one more thing on the Orioles. I kind of fall in the middle on the BVP argument. Like I look at it, but I don't swear by it. But Adam Jones is 1 for 33 in his career against John Danks. So I'm not sure how much Adam Jones exposure I'll have. That could be a way also just to differentiate the lineups, because a lot of people don't take BVP into account at all. So obviously, if you're stacking the Orioles against the lefty, you're going to have Adam Jones. So if you skip over him or use like Ricard instead of him, then your Orioles stack will just be different than theirs. And if Jones has a bad game and your guy does well, then you're just ahead of all the Orioles stacks. So that's pretty much how I plan on attacking both slates, is going with the chalkier plays and chalky pitchers and chalkier stacks, but then differentiating those stacks by using different parts of the batting order than I think most people use, because I think the chalk plays are going to be far and away better than the contrarian options on both of these slates. So I'd rather just find ways to differentiate within a chalk stack than go completely contrarian and just like hope the chalk doesn't hit. One more thing I like stack wise is any lefties on Boston facing Chacin. He's actually been pretty decent against righties, but against lefties he has a 41% hard contact rate dating back to last year and a 351 WOBA. So David Ortiz, Jackie Bradley's probably gonna be on their own. He always is. Travis Shaw will probably be, I would think, would be on their own. Like he was owned 10% tonight after a huge game last night. He was still one of the lowest owned Red Sox. So that's what I think I would do, is have, for the late slate, have a lot of Chase Field exposure, but then work in, some Orioles, work in, Red Sox lefties. So those are my thoughts on both of the slates tomorrow. Definitely stop by the Slurve chat before lock. I'll be in there just talking baseball in general. Talking about, value plays that pop up once lineups are released. So, definitely just stop by and check it out. And good luck today, guys.